You're listening to the Simplified CEO, the podcast that shows you business does not have to be complicated. So grab a coffee, get comfy, and let's show you how you can get success in every area of your life the simpler way. This is a slightly different episode because this is just a personal story. This is just me sharing my journey with you so you understand me a bit better, understand why I am capable of holding this space and having these conversations around perimenopause in business, and what has brought me here today. So, oh my gosh, where to start? So, I suppose I will take you all the way back to the beginning. I have been an entrepreneur for over 10 years now. I have shared the starter story a lot, so I won't go into too much detail, but I had my daughter. I didn't want to go back into full-time employment. Childcare was just extortionate, and I wasn't going to be left with enough to make that separation worthwhile. So I took the very scary leap into self-employment. I had never been to university. I had failed school, my GCSEs. I had zero business experience. I had zero budget to set up a business. I think I had about £200. I was on maternity leave, right? So I think I had about £200 in my bank, and I had a laptop that was really old, but that was enough. I built my own website. I really scrapped, I did everything myself, and I hustled hard. And I was very blessed that that business took off very quickly. And through hustling and grinding, I grew it quite quickly in 4 years to a six-figure business. Sounds amazing, right? And it genuinely was. And I really do feel blessed that it took off so quickly, and it became such a success. And I did manage in that time to keep control of my time. So the whole reason I'd gone into the business was to be, a present mum. And so in those early days of the business, I didn't want to increase my hours and go full time. So I gradually grew the business over that 4 years. I could have hit six figures a lot earlier if I had thrown myself fully into it, but that wasn't my purpose. The reason I was in business was to have that flexibility. And I did hold on to that for a good amount of time. And I took on staff instead of increasing my hours, and everything was going really well. Yes, it was difficult. Yes, I learned a hell of a lot of lessons. I fell, and got back up again. There were some incredible painful moments that will stay with me forever. A lot of tears were shed, a lot of sweat, but also a lot of love and a lot of passion and a lot of pride. I was really, really proud of what I was achieving. I was really ambitious, um, and everything was going amazing. Then I sort of fell into the trap of what the world was telling me I should be growing, what my business should look like by this point. Um, so I hustled harder. I grew my team up to seven. I went back into the business full time, and actually, it turned into a bit of a monster. And I wasn't doing the work that I enjoyed anymore. I was just managing the team and managing the back office, and it felt really hard. And I sort of lost my essence, and my purpose in the business. And at the same time, I was feeling really, I don't know, just different. I was feeling really different. Something had shifted inside of me, and I didn't really understand what it was at the time. But I knew that I needed something to change. So I started making changes in the business. I looked at the systems and processes that I was using internally, and actually managed to reduce the team quite dramatically by just improving how the business was run. And this is one of those spaces, right, where I had never had any experience before of being a manager. It's not something I enjoy doing, running a team of that size, and all of the stresses. I find it immensely stressful running a team. And I hadn't been very good at it, I suppose. I had given them too much leeway. I was a very flexible boss, really wanting to be your friend more than an actual manager and a boss. And they had, a lot of them, unfortunately, had taken liberties. One in particular was a very, very bad case. So I had to take that on my shoulders, had to understand and again learn from that. So I restructured I used systems and processes to massively reduce that team. And we ended up after 6 to 12 months down to three of us. So it was a massive shift. But I still didn't feel aligned enough with what I was doing and how I was spending my time. And all through this time, I was how can I was talking to my doctor about the potential of perimenopause, but I was still young. Like I was still in my 30s, late 30s. So they weren't really listening and they were too young to be going through the perimenopause. But there was a lot of physical things that were happening to me. Um, so I was pretty confident that something definitely was changing and I was at least on the precipice of going into the perimenopause. But I still hadn't made the connection of actually why I was feeling so different and why I was struggling so much at work, and what was happening to me physically. So I had the genius brainwave that actually what I needed to do is to follow my passion and my heart and set up a second business alongside that original business. I thought this was going to really help me fill my cup, fill that void that I'd been feeling. Um, and yeah, just make everything seem better. It's possibly one of the worst decisions I made in many ways because obviously the void and the way I was feeling was because of the perimenopause. So if I already was struggling in one business, why another business was going to fix that, I do not know. However, that decision has actually turned out to be one of the most amazing decisions I made because when I launched that business and I went into it with great excitement and passion, and I truly believe because of the near 10 years of experience I had as an entrepreneur, that it was going to be quite an easy journey. I had learned all the lessons that I needed to know, and this next business was going to absolutely smash it really quickly. Obviously, that wasn't the case because as soon as I launched that second business, all of those emotional elements of perimenopause massively kicked in. It was like a slap around the face, the self-doubt, which I didn't have in business. I was so confident in my ability to be an entrepreneur. So suddenly to be doubting every decision I was making felt really alien to me. But I was absolutely riddled with self-doubt, um, indecisiveness. I couldn't make a decision of where I wanted the business to go. I was sort of fighting the main core elements that you really need in a business, like niching down and understanding who you were helping. And I was just in a fog constantly. And then I just hid because it all felt too much and too pressurized. So for the first probably 12 months of that second business, which is now, as you know, the Simplified CEO. That is what that business has now become. But in that first 6 to 12 months, it was me throwing out a whole myriad of things, different types of events, different courses, different products and services, trying to find some confidence, trying to find some clients, and trying to understand what it was that was going to make me feel like me again. And then finally, one day, I sort of sat down and I was like, okay, what if it isn't me? What if it isn't that I just don't have it anymore? What if it isn't that I am no good at being in business and that this business is just set up to fail? What if something else is going on? And then it hit me that as I'm having these conversations with the doctor and all of that has been going on, and I was finally getting prescribed HRT and going down that route, it's for perimenopause. All of these symptoms are due to the perimenopause. And honestly, it was like being slapped around the face. Everything just made sense. So I then went deep into the research train. I spent hours and hours and hours reading everything I could possibly find on the perimenopause. I'm really trying to understand how it can show up in business. But the reality is, actually, there is nothing out there to tell you how it shows up in business. There is so much content out there telling you about the symptoms themselves, telling you about your diet, telling you about how to sleep better, you should exercise more, all of these things, and a lot to help you about the physical side of it. But there hasn't been one test, one research paper, nothing about how it shows up as an entrepreneur. The closest things I could find was where companies had looked into how it was impacting their staff. And there has been some in recent years, some work on that. But all of this, putting all of this together really helped me understand that actually this journey that I had been on, those changes that I had made in that original business and that simplifying everything and bringing everything back in house, it's all to do with the perimenopause. So I went on an absolute rampage through both of my businesses to really streamline and simplify everything. And that is now what's become the Simplified CEO course and the program and the system that I share with my clients because it was so transformational for me. Um, and there are three key areas to it. There is the mindset, so helping me understand that um, self doubt and the confusion and the lack of clarity and focus, all of those things, what I can put in place to support me to feel better, to be able to lift myself up when I'm having one of those dark days. And just generally work on my mindset without just the standardized fluff of affirmations and meditation, which don't get me wrong, are an element of it that I love and do make improvements. You know, they have helped me, but it isn't enough to sustain you. And it isn't enough for an entrepreneur to be walking out on stage in front of thousands of people, which I've done many times. When you're riddled with self doubt, a couple of affirmations before you walk on stage is not enough. There's further groundwork that needs to be done. Okay. And that is the process that I had to go through. Then we look at your systems. So, as I said, it's about utilizing the processes and actually looking at the workflows and the way things are done in your business and making sure they're done in the most time effective and least effort possible. So, there's a lot of automations, there's a lot of workflow assessment. And also, I talk about this a lot. Is the busy, the builder, and the breakthrough work. What tasks were I just hiding in? So every day I felt like I was working really hard in my coaching business and I couldn't understand why it wasn't taking off. Well, actually, I was completely and utterly hiding in busy tasks. I was rewriting my bios. I was looking at my website, but not doing anything to actually draw people to the website, you know? I was hiding in my email inbox. I was not putting myself out there and actually doing any of the breakthrough work that is going to grow and sustain the business. So when I became aware of this, when I started actually analyzing how I was spending my time, yes, I was working a lot of hours in that business, but none of them on actual tasks that really truly make a difference to a business. So there was a lot of mindset shifts that were required to make me see, okay, I need to step away from those tasks. They might feel safe and there might be a space that I feel comfortable and confident in, but it's not helping me grow this business. And if I truly want this business to take off and be a success, I'm going to need to move away from them. Then there is the actual workflows and the back office. So I am quite a chaotic person. I always have been. But since the perimenopause, it's felt a lot more overwhelming and a lot more chaotic and um, debilitating working in the way that I always worked. So I always had an admin assistant and a PA, someone who could just keep me in check because, like I said, a, didn't have an organized way of handling my information and my data. My um, my computer looked like the inside of my brain, where I have probably hundreds of tabs open at any one point, and they were all really important to me, and I couldn't close any of them because I might need them one day. Um, but it was chaotic, and then I didn't have any organization to them, so I still couldn't find anything, and I ended up reopening it anyway. Um, I didn't have things clearly labeled, so every time I needed to find something, it was taking me ages to find it. And then that really gets you full of anxiety. It's really stressful. And I just realized it was such an utter waste of my time, but also my energy. It was really depleting what little energy I had by just trying to find a folder or a proposal or an email, you know, really simple things. So I did a massive overhaul of my filing systems, all of my folders, my tabs, and just, I mean, I say I overhauled my system. I didn't have a system. I created a system that made everything so easy. So it did not matter who it was or what they were asking me for. I could find it within seconds. And the relief that that created was so powerful. And it just meant that I felt I had more control. I felt more in control and more aligned with my business. Nothing was going to be too much trouble because everything was so simple. Um, I also revisited my visibility. I know how important showing up online is, but it's always been an area that I am not that great with. I get the white paper syndrome. So if I just have to create a piece of content on the fly, my mind goes blank. If I'm not trying to create a piece of content, I have like a million ideas. It's just when I actually have to sit down and be forced to come up with one on the spot that I've just got nothing there. So I had to create a system that was going to allow me to stay visible, to create really engaging content, but without all the effort and the overwhelm. So I created a really strong repurposing strategy. I can spend an hour a week, if that, absolute maximum, and I can get content enough to go across about 7 different platforms. That's really engaging, that's really high converting, and it's super easy. So it's setting up tools like that across my business in every single area of my business that just massively, massively overhauled everything. And I now run my two businesses. So I have a six-figure turnover. I have a really healthy take home that isn't quite in the six figures yet, but it's getting there. I still do the school runs every day. I am now a team of one across both businesses. It's just me. Um, I also get to go for brunch with my girlfriends in the middle of the week if I want. I go on spa days. I am on the school PTA. I'm on the school council. I'm getting to do everything that I am passionate about and enjoy and want to give back to without any pressure or overwhelm or guilt about I should be doing this and I should be doing that. Everything has its place and everything has its space in my life. And it is amazing. And I want this for everybody. Business does not have to be difficult. Even if you are not going through the perimenopause, having a simple business is a dream. But even more so, especially when you are in the perimenopause or the menopause, the world itself can feel really overwhelming. We are getting attacked from every angle. Every hormone we have is going crazy. And we need to do as much as we possibly can to relieve as much mental capacity and noise in our life as absolutely possible. So that is my journey. I have rode the wave. I have loved a lot of it, but I've also been in the depths of despair a lot of the time. And the perimenopause was a giant slap in the face that I wasn't prepared for. I didn't understand. I'd never seen anybody talking about how it shows up in business. So I had no idea. And if I hadn't, had that light bulb moment at that point, it could have been really catastrophic. I have heard of hundreds of women who close their business, who simplify it that much and hide that much that their business goes under. And it's so unnecessary. Your business can absolutely thrive through perimenopause. In fact, most of the women that I work with sustain their income or increase their income, increase their turnover, but work less for it, which is incredible, right? And surely everyone's dream. So, if you have enjoyed listening to my story, thank you so much for joining me this week and hearing this very honest and raw account of what it has taken me to get to where I am and to discover the simplified CEO way. I will put a link in the show notes for anyone who wants to book in a call to discuss how this system might benefit your business and how I might be able to support you. I would love the opportunity to do that. I am incredibly passionate. Now I understand how this is showing up for myself and for others to start the revolution, to start having those conversations in as many rooms as I possibly can and educate as many people as I can because this is a pandemic. There are 13 million women in the UK right now who are perimenopausal or menopausal. That is one in three of us. So I know that I'm not alone, and I want you to know that you are not alone either. So reach out. You can find me on Instagram. I'm the Claire Bartlett, and I look forward to supporting you, to carrying on this conversation, and supporting as many people as I can who are suffering with this.